Hey there, this is Ray Villalobos, and I wanted to talk about linking to files within your website and also what's going on in the background and how you can debug any issues that you may run into. Say that you're trying to link to a logo and it's not showing up and you don't know why. I'm going to run through some of those. So this is a typical file structure. You have a server, say yoursite.com, and in that server, there's a series of folders. Well, one of those folders is what we call the domain root. When you type in the URL to that website, say yoursite.com, it assumes that you're trying to go to that folder, and the website or the client actually tries to find that folder and display its contents. You may have other subfolders like this projects and this links test folder, and inside those you may have different files. Now, if you have a file called index.html, on most servers, that file is known as the default document. And when you type in the URL for that document, you don't have to type in this name. So to get to this file, you would type in http://pixelprize.com/projects/links-test. So you don't have to type in index.html. Now, I have this same structure on my local directory, and I want to show you how I would link to these other files that are in here and some of the issues that come up. So let me switch over to my desktop, and I can show you that I have right now a links test folder. This is just on my local file. This is not my server documents. And I have an index file as well as an images folder that has a background.jpg and a logo.png. And then I have a CSS folder with a style.css document. All right, so here's the files opened up on my text editor, and I have a little browser preview here on the right-hand side. So what I'm going to do is just create a basic HTML document. I'll call this links test. And I want to link to, say, one of these images right here, this logo, right? So what I want to do is type in image, and the location of that logo, you could write it out in a few ways, but you could do it like this. You could say, hey, in relation to this file, the index.html file, I need to go to the images folder and then find the file called logo.jpg or JPG. Save this. Let me go ahead and give this an alt tag, logo. Save it, refresh, and I should see the logo. So what's going on here? Look, this is very typical. I mistyped the name. So let's see in the browser. If you didn't type the name, if the logo didn't come up and you're like, well, I know it's called logo, right? This is a typical error. So let's see how you debug something like this. Well, I'm going to right click in here and select inspect element. I'm using Google Chrome, and Google Chrome has this sort of error window, and you can tell that there's an error because there's a little notice right here. And if you click on that, it's going to say something like failed to load resource. And it's telling you where it tried to find it. Users folder, Ray Villalobos, blah, blah, blah. So the problem here is that this is supposed to be logo.png, but I'm asking for logo.jpg, right? So I need to fix that. But this right click and inspect element is a good way of testing things. The other thing that you could do is it has different tabs right here, this window. So you can click on network and refresh your page. And this will also tell you in red if it couldn't find a specific file. So I refresh by not clicking that button, but the command key on a Mac is Command R for refresh. So let's go ahead and fix that. Okay, so obviously I just typed in the name, the extension here wrong. So .png. I'm going to save this, and then I'll come over here and refresh. And now the logo loads up. Notice that my network tab shows that it's finding the logo just fine. Okay, so awesome. That's one way of figuring out where you linked improperly to a file. And let's go ahead and try to link to this style.css document. I've already got some styles going on in here. So to do that, we're going to, in the head section, type in the link tag, relationship style sheet, and the href will be in the CSS folder. Again, we're doing things in relationship to this folder, right? So CSS, I'm sorry, we're doing this in relationship to this file. So from this index.html file, I have to go to the CSS folder and then look for the style.css file. So refresh, I'm sorry, save that and refresh. And we should be seeing some styles appear here. But actually, there's another problem. And you know, another typical problem that'll happen here is sometimes you'll put in styles, right? And you named it style, and you'll be like, oh man, you can't really find that because you can't really look sometimes at the fact that you added an extra S. But that's not what's going on here. like what's happening here is I created a style, right, for the image, but it's not getting applied. So why not? Well, let's go back into the index file. Well, in here, the image, right, is right there. And the class that I created for modifying this image is under a class called logo. So another issue that I'm having here is the selector here is logo, but it really needed to be image, right? So let me just go ahead and fix it that way. I'll save this and refresh, and now my image is getting affected by that CSS document. But I actually like having this image as you know, in a special class, because what if I had another image, then it would get the same style as this. So I only want to use this class, or I only want to use these styles if my logo has a class of .logo or logo. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to add a class to this image, and it's going to be called logo. Save this, and now it links just fine. So another possibility is that the image that you had is not linked to the right style. Okay. Another issue that may happen is something like this. Like, say you make an error up here at the somewhere above the current element that you're trying to affect. Let's see what happens when I refresh. Now, this is not, you know, the style that I had for that logo is not getting applied. Why is that? Well, that's because although the CSS for this right here is perfectly well written, there's an error above. And I can tell on this editor because the colors don't look right. Remember when I had this curly bracket here, this looked at, you know, like it was a different color because it's a class. So the syntax highlighting sometimes can help you figure out where the mistakes are. But if you make a mistake like this, they're hard to debug because you don't know where in your CSS you've made a mistake. But any CSS after a mistake will just not work. And so those are really, really tough to debug. Here's another thing that you can do. Say that you made, let's see, let's go ahead and put this right here. Say that we had that problem where we didn't give this the right class. So I'll delete the class name from this, and my logo shouldn't have the style. Okay, so here's a problem where, well, we don't know what's going on. I thought I created a style, but it's not getting applied. We already know that it's because we didn't give that image the class of logo. But let's see if we can find out what the problem is in a different way. So if you right-click on this logo, you can, again, select Inspect Element, right? And Chrome gives you a lot of different tools that you can use to figure out what potential problems could be. If you look at my screen right now, you can see that on the left, if we're on the Elements tab, on the left we have like a file structure for the whole HTML document. And I can use these triangles to open these up and take a look at what's happening here. Now, on the right, I have a series of different tabs. And these tabs are going to give me information about the current document, or at least the current selected element. So if I click on, say, body, and I'm going to click on styles, notice that it's telling me that this body element has some styles associated with it, and they're being affected, or they're being controlled by the user agent style sheet. This just refers to the current browser. The browser has some default styles, and these styles that this body tag is getting come from that. But sometimes, say, like you have on the style sheet, we have a style here on the whole HTML tag. It's not really doing anything yet, but let's go ahead and add a style to the body. So we'll say body, and we'll say font family, and we'll use Arial, and font size, we'll give it like 18 pixels, so it's kind of big. And then we'll say color red. All right, so let me go ahead and come back here and type something in here. So I'll just do a paragraph, welcome, right? And let me go ahead and refresh the space. So now you can tell that the word welcome has something that's not a default style applied to it. So let's go ahead and right-click on this and select Inspect Element. Now, if we take a look at the elements, you can see the structure of the document. That looks great. But what's really cool is on the right-hand side, you can see that we have some styles that have been applied to this element. So we have a style inherited from body here that tells us that this font is going to be red. So, and I don't know if you can tell here, inherited from body. So if we look at the body tag, you can see that this body tag has some styles, right? And those styles, and it should be telling me here where they're coming from. So we applied to the body, we selected, and we're already doing inspect element. Let's see. Well, you can tell here that some of these styles are getting applied, and you can see where they are here, the font size, the font family, and we can turn these on and off. We can also use this window right here to test out what would happen if we add other styles too. So say that we wanted to test, well, I really 18 pixels looks kind of small, so I can say 50 pixels, and that temporarily updates this window, right? So it's kind of telling you where the styles are coming from, and it lets you also play around with them. So that's pretty cool. If you refresh the page, all this will be gone. So sometimes that helps in debugging, like your styles. Oh, here we go. Now it's telling you. Also, when you select an element, it's also going to tell you what style sheet it's linked to and where in that style sheet it's getting this style from. So it's telling you that this file on line 9 has this description. And you can actually click on that and go to the style sheet and take a look at what it says. So sometimes that's a great way of debugging problems that you're having with styles. You can just go directly to the element, right? And notice that when I right click on the welcome and I select inspect element, I don't have any styles for this paragraph. Those styles that this font is getting are being inherited from this right here. And that's what this means. It means that you didn't apply them to this element, but because this element is a child of body, it's inheriting some styles from that. All right, cool. That's enough for that. So let's go ahead and make this small again. And now let's come back here and we'll add that class of logo, right? So that it resizes that logo. And I'll go ahead and take this welcome thing out. So save that, refresh. Let's try doing that inspect element. So right click on the element, inspect element. So we've got the image selected, and let's see what it says now. It says, okay, so I don't know why sometimes it doesn't seem to show you the line number here. That's very odd. But if you click on that, you can see that it says, okay, here's all the styles. It comes from this dot logo, right? You can even come over here and play around with the CSS, so you can actually tell it temporarily to like not find the style, and then it would reset everything. So this is a pretty cool way of testing things out and also figuring out where you're getting problems from. So again, I'll refresh so it grabs the style, and let me see what else I can show you. All right, so let's go ahead and figure out why this background image is not showing up, right? So in my HTML file, or sorry, my HTML selector, I'm trying to set a background image, but I just didn't put it in here. So what do you think the location of this image is? Well, you may be thinking, well, we're looking at the index.html document, right? And the images folder, right, that's at the same level as this index file, has the background.jpg document that we're looking for. So you may be thinking, images, right, background.jpg. Right, save that. I'm going to refresh, and that's not working. Well, why is that? Well, let's take a look again and select inspect element. Okay, so it's already telling you here that there's an error, and we'll click on that. It says that it can't find that image. Now you're wondering, well, shoot. If I go to the links test folder and the CSS folder and the images folder, that's where that background is, right? So what's going on here? Well, the problem is that the CSS file is not in the same folder as the HTML document. So we've got the CSS file is inside a CSS folder, right? And from the index document, we link to this CSS file. But as far as the CSS file knows, this images folder is not in the same folder as this file, as this style.css file, right? So it thinks that there should be an images folder at the same place as this file. So the way to fix that is by using, again, in relative terms, we have to say back up a folder. And we say dot dot slash. That means go up one level. So now you're back at the same level as index.html. And then look for the images folder, right? And then the background.jpg file. So let's go ahead and save that and come back here and refresh. And now we should see the background image. That's a really tough problem to debug because, man, if you look at this, if you inspect element and say, let's go ahead and delete these right here and save it, and we'll refresh this thing. If you look at this right here, you know that there's an error, but you know that that's where the file is. Actually, this is telling you it's looking for the file inside the CSS folder, right? And the way that you've linked it, this CSS file doesn't have an images folder in it, right? The CSS folder actually doesn't have an images file. Sorry, this CSS folder doesn't have an images folder. So we can actually say dot dot slash and say back up a level and find it. Okay, but there are actually different ways of linking as well to those files. And the one that you're most familiar with is the relative position, right? So you could say link to in relationship to this file. And you got to watch out because sometimes you've got files inside other folders like we did right here. But there's actually some other ways that you can link. So I'm going to save this and I'll make sure I save both of these. And I'm going to put these on the server. So let's go ahead and fire up transmit. And I need to log into pixelprowess.com and find my folder. So remember my structure, we were in the projects folder, and then in there we have this links test folder, and here's all those files. So I'm going to just not replace everything, but I want to make sure that I upload my everything but the images folder because I already have that one there with the images. So I'm going to just grab these two and copy them over here and replace all of them. All right, cool. So now I'm going to go back into my browser and I'm going to fire up a window, right? And I'm actually going to go to the website. And this is coming up just fine. All right, so we have linked to the image and the logo with relative URLs. But there's actually a couple of other ways that you can link to those files. And I'm going to show them to you. Let's see. Let's go back into our text editor. So back over here. Since those files are on the internet, they have a URL. So if I wanted to get to this logo, just the logo itself, I could actually right-click on this and select Open Image and New tab, right? And you can get to that logo. Actually, I'm sorry, I opened up the local version of my HTML file. So I need to open up the one that's on the web, right? The one that says pixelprowess.com/project/links test. So I'll right-click on this logo and select Open Image and New tab. Right, so if I click on that, notice that it gives me, this is what we call the absolute URL of this file. This is where this logo is on the internet. So in addition to using relative URLs, I can actually paste that entire URL I could actually paste that entire URL in here, right? And I'm going to save this and I'm going to say open this in a browser. This is going to be not the one that's in the internet, but a copy of my local file. And this works just fine, right? If we look at the HTML for this, you can see that it's referring to that logo that's on the internet, right? By using that absolute URL. And that's what this means. This is called an absolute URL. It's a link to where that file is on the internet. Now, what you have to remember is this is not the same as the copy of that file that I have right here. So this is not linking to this logo.png anymore. It's linking to the one that's on the internet, right? And that can be good or bad because if you link to something that's not on the internet and then you maybe make some changes to this logo locally, you're not going to know, when you look at this page, you're not going to see the logo that you have on your machine. You're going to see the one that's on the internet. But that's another way of linking to files. In the same way, I could link to this style sheet, not the one that I have right here, but the one that's on the internet, right? And it would still work, right? So I could actually grab this URL and say, okay, I want you to go to the website, projects folder, links test, and then find the folder called CSS and then style.css. Save this, preview it on a browser, and it should come right up. Notice that the image loads a little bit slower. That's because it's loading the copy that's on the internet, not the copy that's on the local folder. So that works just fine. And you could, in the style sheet also, instead of say back up a folder, you could type in that whole thing. So you could actually say, hey, I want you to link to the website, projects, links, test folder, and find the images folder, right? And then load the background.jpg, save that, and that would still work. So this is another way of doing it. Now, the problem with this is, again, that you're not linking to you're linking to the file on the web. So if at any point in time you move this folder somewhere else, or say you change the name of your website, you have to worry about updating all these links. So you really only use absolute URLs whenever you're referring to files that are not in the current website. Okay, there's one more way of linking to these files. Let me go ahead and put these back. So say back up a level here and back over here. And I'm going to undo these until they're like they used to be. So now if I come here and refresh, everything will still work. And it's showing you all the files and everything's cool. All right, so there's actually another way that we can link to those files. And that is called a root relative reference. Those are a little bit weird and hard to understand, but this is how they work. Remember, my file structure looks something like this. We have a domain root, and here I have put in a slash right next to this word domain root. You can actually use this slash to refer to a file from the top of your website. So if I was referring to this logo from the top of my website, you would refer to it by saying, hey, go to the top of my website, and that would be pixelprize.com /projects/links test /images/logo.jpg. And in the same way, you could say, hey, go ahead and do the same thing to find the style sheet. So this is the same thing as saying, hey, go all the way back to the top of my website and go through the folder structure and find this file. Let's go ahead and update the style.css document again. Okay, I can get rid of this dot and paste all that in. Oops, I'm sorry. Yeah, actually that works. Go all the way back to the top of the website. That's what this first slash means. Then go to projects, links, test, images, and background.jpg. I'm going to save this and come back here, and I'm going to preview this on a browser, and you'll see that it won't work. Everything will break. Now, this is perfectly accurate written HTML, but the reason it's breaking is because I'm asking you to go from the top of the website, and this file that I'm working with right now, it's actually just on my hard drive. And when I say go to the top of my website, I'm working with local files, and these files don't know what you mean by top of what website. Like, what are you talking about? This computer has its own root, and when I use that slash, it's referring to the computer's root. And there is no website linked to that location. So this will actually work if I post this on my website. So again, I'm going to grab the links test, and I'm going to grab everything. I won't grab the images folder again because I don't want to upload those again. And I'm going to drag these here and replace. I'll say apply to all, replace all these. Yeah, I thought it would have done both of them. Okay, so let's now go back into or refresh this page right here. So this is linking to my website. So notice that it still works just fine. And if we look at the source code for this, you'll see that it is using this absolute reference or root relative reference right, to go back to the top of my website and find the projects folder, and then go to the links test folder, find the CSS folder, and find the style sheet. You may be wondering, like, this is ridiculous. Like, why would I ever want to do that? Well, you remember that in the instance where we were having to refer to a file relatively, so when we were in the style.css document and we wanted to refer to this image, right, that's in the background folder, right? I'm sorry, this image from the style.css document, right? We had a problem because this file is not in the same place as this index file, right? So by saying go to the top of the website and then find the path, what we're telling the browser to do is, I don't care where this file is, this styles.css document. You could put it in any folder or any subfolder or any subfolder of the website. I want you to go to the top of the website, find the projects folder, find et cetera, find the links test folder, et cetera, et cetera. So this kind of root relative reference takes away the need to figure out, in relationship to the document, where are you in the file system. You don't have to worry about that. You just say, hey, just go to the top of the website. This can be really useful on something like, say, the logo, because you may divide, eventually when your website gets bigger, you may divide your website into subfolders. So you may have, like, say, a marketing folder, a contact us folder, whatever, products folder. Well, if you create a file inside those folders or several files inside those folders, and you're trying to refer to the logo, and you put that logo at the root of your website in an images folder, you would always have to be thinking, okay, so if I am three directories in, I need to back up three folders and then find the images folder and then find the logo. Or now I am only, say, 2 directories in, so now I need to do .. / 2 times, and then now I'm in the root folder. See how that's sort of a pain? This root relative link allows you to just say, hey, I don't care where you are, just go to the top of the site and then navigate through to the item that you want. This is very convenient whenever you have a very large website with a complex file structure and you can't really worry about where in that subfolder structure are. So those are the 3 different ways. By far, the most common is always going to be relative. The root relative you will learn how to do when you get into more complicated file structures.